Okay, let's dive in. Picture this, a lake, right, in Tanzania.
Yeah.
And it's this deep, striking red color. And its shores look like they're scattered with, well, animal statues. Stone animals.
Yeah, it sounds completely out there, like something from another planet almost.
Exactly. But it's totally real. Lake Natron. And the science behind why it's like this is genuinely fascinating.
It really is. And what's incredible is how this apparently hostile place, the stone animal lake, as you said, actually tells us so much about geology and biology working together.
So that's what we're doing today. We're really getting into Lake Natron, northern Tanzania. It sits near the Kenyan border, right in the East African Rift Valley.
And in looming over it is the volcano, old Doinyo Lengai, an active one too.
Right. So our mission, if you like, is to unpack the science of this place. We've looked at scientific papers, NASA imagery, conservation reports, trying to get you the full picture.
And the first thing that hits you about Natron is just how extreme it is. The water's pH can get up to 10.5, maybe even 12.
Wow, 12. That's an incredibly alkaline, like ammonia level.
Yeah, or milk of magnesia. Very, very alkaline. And on top of that, it's super salty, so you can immediately see why, most things just can't survive there.
Okay, so what makes it so intense?
Yeah.
What's driving this extreme chemistry?
Well, it really comes down to the geology of the area. It's volcanic.
Okay.
The ground around it is packed with specific minerals, salts, especially sodium carbonate, natron. That's a direct result of the volcanic activity nearby.
And old Doinyo Lengai, the volcano you mentioned, that's key here, isn't it?
Absolutely central. And this is where it gets really, really interesting. Old Doinyo Lengai isn't your standard volcano, the kind spewing silica-rich lava.
Okay. How is it different?
It's unique. It's the only known volcano that erupts something called carbonatite lava.
Carbonatite?
Yeah, it's rich in carbonates, sodium and potassium carbonates, like natron, not silica. And get this, it erupts much cooler than other lava.
Cooler lava.
Much cooler. And this specific kind of lava, this carbonatite, is pretty much the source ingredient for this whole unique lake environment. It's foundational.
So this unusual volcanic stuff directly feeds the lake?
Pretty much, yeah. When Old Doinyo Lengai erupts, ash and material full of these carbonates get washed into Lake Natron by rain and runoff.
Okay.
Then, because the lake is shallow and it's in a really hot, dry area, there's massive evaporation.
Right, so the water disappears, but the minerals get left behind.
Exactly. They become super concentrated. And that's what gives you the extreme alkalinity and those natron deposits you see around the edges.
And natron itself, that's the sodium carbonate.
That's the one. Found in the dried parts of the lake bed. It gives the lake its name. You might know it as washing soda or soda ash.
Oh, right, washing soda.
And here's a cool historical link. The ancient Egyptians used natron for mummification.
No way. Why?
Because it's brilliant at preserving things. It basically sucks all the moisture out. It's a desiccant. And the high alkalinity stops bacteria and fungi that cause decay, like a natural antiseptic.
Wow. Okay, so that explains the extreme chemistry. But that color, that vivid red and pink, it looks unreal.
Yeah, the color, that's down to tiny living things. Microorganisms that actually love the salt and the alkalinity.
They like it.
They thrive in it. Some sources point to cyanobacteria, those tiny bacteria that photosynthesize. Others mention Haloarchaea.
Haloarchaea?
Yeah, they're a type of archaea, really ancient single-celled life, and they absolutely adore super salty places. And crucially, they produce these reddish pigments.
So these microbes are literally painting the lake red.
That's basically it, yeah. And the color isn't always the same intensity. It gets strongest usually late in the dry season.
Why then?
Because the water level drops, right? So the salt concentration goes way up, and so does the concentration of these little red pigment-producing microbes. Everything gets more intense.
It still sounds incredibly forbidding. I mean, caustic water, high temperatures, you said, over 100 Fahrenheit.
Oh, yeah, it can get really hot. It is deadly to most animals. But, surprisingly, it does support some unique life. Some things have adapted brilliantly.
Okay, so who are the tough guys living in this extreme spot?
Well, the absolute stars of Lake Natron are the lesser flamingos.
Flamingos. Really?
Yeah.
They seem so delicate.
They do, don't they? But huge flocks gather there. We're talking potentially millions across East Africa, and Lake Natron is the most important breeding site for them. Over 75% of the entire world's lesser flamingos breed right there.
75%. That's astounding. How on earth do they manage in that water?
Incredible adaptations. Their legs have this really tough skin, like scales almost, which protects them from burns.
Okay.
And they have special glands near their nasal cavity that filter out salt from the water they drink.
Clever. And their pink color. Did that come from the lake, too?
Indirectly, yes. They eat spirulina, which is a type of blue-green algae or cyanobacteria found in the lake. That algae contains pigments, like xanthan. Yeah, it's a pigment similar to beta-carotene in carrots. The flamingos process it, and that's what turns their feathers pink.
So they're eating the lake's microscopic life, and that makes them pink.
Pretty much. And there's another benefit to this harsh lake for them.
What's that?
Protection. The caustic water keeps most predators away from their nesting sites on the salt islands.
That makes sense. A natural fortress. So mainly flamingos, then. Anything else?
There's actually a fish, a species of tilapia, the alkaline tilapia, that's endemic, found only there.
A fish survives in that.
Well, it sticks to the edges near where slightly less salty hot springs feed into the lake, but still, pretty tough fish.
Definitely. Okay, let's tackle that nickname, the Stone Animal Lake. Does it actually turn animals into statues? It sounds so mythological.
Right, yeah, that needs a bit of clarification. It's not like Medusa turning things instantly to stone.
Okay, good.
What happens is that the high sodium carbonate levels act as an amazing natural preservative. Think back to the Egyptians.
Ah, the mummification lake.
Exactly. So animals that unfortunately die in or around the lake don't decompose in the usual way. They get preserved, almost mummified, by the minerals.
So they look like statues, but they're actually preserved carcasses.
Precisely. The minerals draw out the moisture, stop decay. There was a photographer, Nick Brandt, who took some very famous, very striking photos of these animals.
Yeah, I think I've seen those. Eerie.
They are, but it's important to know he found these preserved animals and then posed them for the photographs. They weren't just frozen mid-stride or anything.
Right, understood. Still, a lake that naturally mummifies things, it really highlights just how extreme that chemistry is.
So beyond the spectacle, what's the bigger ecological picture here?
Oh, ecologically, Lake Natron is incredibly important. Number one reason. Those lesser flamingos.
Because it's their main breeding ground.
Their primary breeding ground globally. And the species is classed as near threatened.
Near threatened, why? Partly because they have such specific needs. They need places exactly like Lake Natron, these alkaline, salty lakes, and there just aren't that many of them. So their whole population is vulnerable if something happens to these few key sites.
So Lake Natron is critical. What kind of threats does it and the flamingos face?
There are quite a few concerns, unfortunately. Things like changes to the water flowing into the lake, development nearby.
Development, like what?
Well, there was a serious proposal a while back to build a soda ash extraction plant right there.
Oh, wow. That sounds potentially devastating.
It really did. Also, prolonged droughts are a problem. And interestingly, sometimes too much water in other Rift Valley lakes can be an issue.
Too much water? How?
If other lakes, like, say, Lake Nakuru, get too full, the water becomes less salty, and the algae the flamingos eat doesn't grow as well, so their food source dwindles.
Complex. Any other threats?
Yeah, just general disturbance from human activity can affect breeding, and power lines in the region are a collision hazard for the birds.
What happened with that soda ash plant idea? Did it get stopped?
Thankfully, yes, that specific large-scale plan was shelved. Studies actually suggested that maybe ecotourism could bring more long-term economic benefits to local communities anyway.
That's good news.
Yeah, and apparently the soda ash quality at Natron wasn't as good as other sources either, which probably helped tip the balance.
So it sounds like people recognize its importance. Are there conservation efforts?
There are. The whole Lake Natron Basin was designated a Ramsar site, that's a wetland of international importance, back in 2001.
Okay.
And there are community-based conservation projects, people monitoring the flamingo breeding, efforts to make power lines safer in some areas. Botswana also has a flamingo sanctuary in the Makgadikgadi Pans.
But it sounds like maybe more is needed.
Definitely. There's a push for more formal protection and better management plans for these key sites. Continuous monitoring of the water quality is vital too, especially with potential impacts from things like irrigation upstream.
Right.
And really making sure that the local Maasai communities benefit from conservation is crucial for making it sustainable.
You mentioned rising water levels in other lakes being a problem. Is that climate change? Or
it's likely a mix of things. Climate change could be playing a role, definitely, but also maybe deforestation in the catchment areas, changes in how water is used, maybe natural cycles like El Niño events.
Yeah.
It's complex and still being studied.
Okay.
But whatever the exact cause, the result, less salty water, less food for flamingos, is a serious threat.
Let's circle back to old Doinyo Lengai, the volcano. Its role seems absolutely fundamental to everything we've discussed.
Cannot overstate it. Its unique carbonatite lava is the very reason the lake has its specific chemistry. It's the engine of this whole ecosystem.
And it's important culturally, too, right?
Hugely important. For the local Maasai people, it's a sacred place. They call it Mountain of God.
Mountain of God. Wow.
Yeah, it shows this deep connection people there have with the landscape, predating our scientific understanding, but recognizing its power. And of course, it attracts climbers and scientists, too.
So, Lake Natron. It's way more than just a weird red lake. It's this intricate system vital for a vulnerable species, all driven by a one-of-a-kind volcano. And people actually go visit. It sounds pretty remote.
It is quite remote, and the infrastructure isn't extensive, but yes, it's becoming an ecotourism spot. People go for the landscape, which is just otherworldly.
I bet.
And obviously, the flamingo watching is spectacular. Plus, bird watching generally, and experiencing the Maasai culture.
Okay, so wrapping this up, we've got this super alkaline, super salty lake. Its crazy red color comes from tiny salt-loving microbes. All this chemistry is thanks to a unique volcano spewing carbonate-rich lava.
Old Doinyo Lengai, yeah.
And this extreme place, hostile to most, is actually the crucial lifeline for huge numbers of lesser flamingos.
The main breeding site globally.
But this whole delicate setup is facing some serious pressures now.
That sums it up perfectly. It's this amazing interplay of geology, biology, ecology, all hanging in a delicate balance.
So this deep dive really leaves us with a big question for you, the listener. When you consider the environmental changes happening and how utterly dependent these flamingos are on just a few places like Lake Natron, well, what does the future look like for them?
Yeah, and for the extraordinary lake itself.
And maybe, what's our responsibility globally to protect these incredibly unique and clearly quite fragile corners of the world?
That really is the core issue, isn't it? Lake Natron's story is a stark reminder of how interconnected nature is and how vulnerable these specialized ecosystems can be.
Absolutely. If this has sparked your curiosity, definitely check out the sources we used. And seriously, look up pictures and videos of Lake Natron and Old Doinyo Lengai.
Oh, definitely. Seeing it, even in images, really brings home how strange and beautiful it is.